Old powers waken, shadows stir. An age of wonder and terror will soon be upon us. An age for gods and heroes.
The glass candles are burning, and you're listening to the Obsidian Nights podcast. Welcome back to Obsidian Nights, where we go through chapter by chapter of A Song of Ice and Fire. Today, we are covering Tyrion 2 of A Game of Thrones, and my special guest is Alicia Patience. Hey girl, would you like to let the people know where they can find you?
Yeah, so I'm at Alicia Patience on Twitter and at Awaking Beauty Alley on Instagram. And I just restarted my YouTube channel talking about Game of Thrones and their fairy tale symbolism. And my YouTube channel is just my name, Alisa Patience, like the virtue. And please forgive the beginner quality of my videos.
You're good. You're good. Everybody has to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere when you're starting out doing a YouTube channel or a podcast. The important thing is that you put yourself out there and you grow from it, learn from it. Girl, I know. I've been there.
Thank you.
No problem. And I will link all of her information in the description box. If you're listening on Apple, it'll be in that description box. I'm glad you could make it to discuss Tyrion 2. And today I feel like we're going to be talking about the lion and the wolf. So let's just get into the juice. So Tyrion 2 takes place during the journey from Winterfell to the Wall. From Winterfell to the Wall, it's about 600 miles. I never realized that it was that far. And in this chapter, it takes them, they've been riding for 18 days and they still aren't at the wall. But the king and all the court, Ned Stark and the girls, all of them went south. But Tyrion and Jon are on quite a different journey. They're going north. And one thing that I noticed reading this chapter again is that the Starks in general, Benjen Stark and the Starks in general, are actually unpleasant prudes. They're really stuck up.
Yeah, I understand why Catelyn is generally doesn't trust the Lannisters, because she feels like that they like threatened her son, you know, but like and then an assassin appears, but like Benjen has no reason to dislike Tyrion. Like, he's a guest, he just wants to see what everyone's doing, and he's like sassing him.
Right. I just didn't get it. Like, Benjen, clearly he doesn't like Tyrion. And when I was reading it again, I was like, Jaime is right. By what right does the wolf judge the lion? Like, why are they, like, you have no reason to just, like, I see why Ned Stark doesn't like Jaime Lannister. Get it. But why do you not like Tyrion? Is it like just because he's a Lannister? Is it because he's a dwarf? Or is it just because you're cold and miserable and don't feel like being bothered with like a tourist? I don't really get it. And it's kind of hypocritical because like the Starks aren't perfect. They haven't done everything in their life perfect. There were some pretty horrible Starks that we could talk about. So it's like Benjen is in this glass house on quicksand throwing rocks at Tyrion, and it just doesn't make sense to me at all.
Yeah, he says he doesn't want to give Benjen like the satisfaction of complaining about the cold. And I think, like you said, the Starks aren't perfect, and I think part of it is the fact that he's a Lannister, but I think it's partly that he's a dwarf, because like Starks aren't perfect. They're not free of judgment or making snap judgments or like being superficial. And I don't know if Benjen's ever had to deal with someone like Tyrion before. So I think it is part of it that he's just judging him for being a dwarf like everyone else.
Yeah, I think it's like a combination of everything. He's a Lannister, he's a dwarf, and then Benjen just feels like this is just some extra bullshit that I have to deal with while I'm just trying to go back to the wall. So I do feel like it's a combination of all of it. And the Starks, they're definitely painted like these bleak prudes of the North, and Benjen fits right in. I think when you read this chapter, what sticks out the most to me is all of the dragon lore.
Yes. There's so much. That's the majority of the chapter, and it's really short. It's like 4 pages, or 6 pages, and it's mostly just Tyrion talking about his experience with the dragon skulls and reading about dragons.
Yeah, like we've had 2 POVs from Daenerys so far, but it's this chapter so far that has had the most dragon lore. And you would think that the dragon lore would actually come from the exiled dragon lords, but no, it's coming from a bookworm dwarf with questionable parentage, which isn't really questionable at the time that he's dropping all this dragon lore, which it does make you wonder, is Tyrion a Targaryen, or is he just a boy who really likes big, cool, fire-breathing, scaly animal weapons? Like, I know. I mean, come on. House Targaryen, all that.
Forever, fire and blood. I realized I wanted to see when the first time Balerion the Black Dread is said, and this is the first time that all of the dragons are, like, mentioned by name.
Yeah.
Like, Daenerys mentions, like, Aegon the Conqueror, or Aegon Targaryen, but, like, she doesn't, like, really talk about the dragons as much as she uses I am blood of the dragon to comfort herself. This is, like, the first time that we're getting any information about the dragons themselves.
And I was reading it. I don't know if you've seen it. I had put it on Twitter. I was reading it, and it said that the dragon skulls, Tyrion, when he went to King's Landing to see the dragon skulls, like, the oldest one was 3,000 years old. And I'm like, that has to be a typo because Balerion is not 3,000 years old.
It's probably just a typo, or maybe George didn't know how long the dragons were around when he wrote it. Or maybe Tyrion's just wrong. Maybe this is one of the moments where he's just wrong.
Yeah. I mean, there's moments like that in this chapter. So Tyrion is like, he's read all the maps. Like, he's read all the maps, but then when he's actually on the road, he's like, the road isn't the maps. Like, this isn't the maps. I guess it's kind of like a conception thing. So where we know that the histories, the oral histories, and all of these things aren't right. We know that it's all a jumbled mess written years after things have happened. So Tyrion probably just doesn't really know, and he's just giving an astronomical number, or George went back and retconned some of the stuff. But what do you think? Are you like Tyrion Targaryen or Tyrion Lannister?
Well, I'm 100% Tyrion's secret Targ. There's so much subtext for it throughout all of the books, and even in the show that they ended up not doing anything with. But there's a line where he's talking to Jon about how he imagined, like, the fires he would light in the bowels of Casterly Rock. He said he would imagine them, like, burning Tywin and his sister. And then he says, "Don't look at me that way, bastard. I know your secret. You've dreamt the same kind of dreams." And I'm like, he's dreamt the same kind of dreams, like dragon dreams? It's because they're both secret Targs. And we already know, like, pretty much #confirmed that Jon is a secret Targ.
Yeah, Jon is definitely a secret Targ.
So if they've dreamt the same dreams about fire and, like, conquering and stuff, all from what we know, only Targaryens have dragon dreams. So I think that's pretty solid evidence if you've read all the books.
So I'm not Team Targaryen, Team Tyrion Targaryen. I'm not Team Tyrion Targaryen. Like, I think it could go either way. I've
seen your DNA video.
I think for me personally, like, Tyrion being Tywin's true-born son adds like a lot more dynamic to their relationship with each other. But I definitely see the case that is made for Tyrion being a Targaryen, especially in this chapter. Like in this chapter, he's reading books on dragons and the history of dragons that he's borrowed from the Winterfell libraries. Like he says he has this morbid fascination with dragons. The first time he ever goes to King's Landing is for Cersei's wedding, and what he wanted to do, what he went out his way to do was see the dragon skulls. Like he made it a point to seek them out and basically played with the dragon skulls in awe until his torch almost burned out. And then Tyrion also says, like you said, he used to dream of dragons and start fires in the bowels of Casterly Rocks and stare at the flames. So there's a lot in this chapter alone. And then as we go forward, like he still has dreams. He has a dragon dreams in a Dance with Dragons. So I see it being there, but like I feel like there's definitely a possibility that George is going to make Tyrion a Targaryen, or he has wanted us to at least think about it. But is there a need for so many secret Targaryens? Like, does that take away from Jon Snow's parentage reveal? Does it add to it? Does that make Tyrion the rightful heir to the Iron Throne? Like, I just struggle with like the narrative of it all. Like, is it going to be one of those things that is never answered?
It might be, and we've all just done all this mind twisting for nothing, but I think the narrative, I do understand the poetry in Tywin hating Tyrion so much when Tyrion's his like real son. There is a poetry to that, but there doesn't have to be. It could be nothing, but it said over and over again, the dragon has 3 heads. Mm-hmm. So there has to be 3, and if Aegon is in fact Fagon, which I'm also like 99% sure he is, that means there still needs to be a 3rd head of the dragon. And I think because there's all the support for it, it would have to be Tyrion, and I don't think it would take away from it because Jon, Daenerys, and Tyrion are like the 3 like main heads of the story. So like them coming together and all being secret Targs, that doesn't take away from Jon's identity, because like the reason why Jon's identity is so important is because Ned like was like this honorable man, and he like had a much worse reputation than he would have had because he was protecting his sister's child, again supposedly, and it's a big deal for Jon because he has no idea like who his mother is. It's a huge mystery, and I don't think Tyrion, who is 100% sure of who his parents are, finding out that he's been wrong all this time, I don't think that would take away from Jon's dealing with that identity at all.
That's a good point. I mean, what I struggle with is I think that 3rd head of the dragon is Fagon, because I think that Fagon, whether he is a legitimate Targaryen or not, he still has that blood. So like Illyrio, I think that Aegon is a Blackfyre Targaryen. I think there's a lot of evidence that he might be a Blackfyre Targaryen. And Illyrio makes this statement, black or red, a dragon is still a dragon. So I definitely could see Aegon being that. But I'm not going to like ignore the evidence because there's a ton of it. And like if anyone just went through the books and got every piece of evidence that Tyrion is a Targaryen, it's overwhelming, like R plus L equals J overwhelming. I don't want to get too hung up in Tyrion as a Targaryen, but one thing this chapter made me think about was Tyrion actually being the Valonqar. So I've never thought that Tyrion was the Valonqar, but Tyrion tells Jon that he stared in the flames and pictured his father burning and sometimes his sister. So we know staring in the flames is a way of seeing the future for Melisandre. So Tyrion stares in the flames and sees his father burning. And we know that Tyrion later kills his father. And he says he also stared at the flames and pretended his sister was burning. So we know Cersei thinks that Tyrion is the Valonqar. And I think it would be hilarious if Cersei was right this whole time and us, the reader, have just been overcomplicating this thing like, Cersei, you don't know anything, and Cersei was right this whole time.
Man, that would be such like a giant prank from George, because like he knows what he's doing with Jaime's hand and the connection that they have, and making Cersei look wrong, because everyone but Cersei knows that she's not the brightest light bulb in the pack. So yeah, it would all honestly be so disappointing, but also but also totally possible. I totally see how Tyrion could be the Valonqar, but I need Jaime to. I just really want it to be Jaime. I'm not going to be mad if it's Tyrion, because I mean George does so much setup for so many different possibilities that anything he did would make sense. But I want Tyrion. I don't want Cersei's hate for Tyrion to be justified.
Yeah, me either. I like that her paranoia is unfounded and is basically what's destroying her. And she's so far off. That's one of the reasons I really love Cersei's chapters, because her chapters is all about her being paranoid over stuff that isn't real, that isn't there. She's seeing shadows that aren't there. And I will say this: if Tyrion is the Valonqar, that's better than a rock. It's better than a rock. It's better than a rock.
Anything's better than a rock.
Yes. So another big part of this chapter, I would say the biggest part, is the relationship between Jon Snow and Tyrion Lannister. Okay, so we've had we're only 13 chapters in on this book, and we've had Tyrion and Jon together in 2 chapters already. The relationship between Jon and Tyrion is a dynamic one. So they are a lot alike, but they're also not a lot alike. So they're like this dichotomy of each other. And it kind of carries over from Jon 1, where Tyrion is steady kicking knowledge to Jon. So in Jon 1, Tyrion tells him, like, there are worse things in this world than being a bastard. Know what you are, wear it like armor. And in Tyrion 2, Tyrion tells him, a mind needs a book as a sword needs a whetstone. Which, as an avid reader, I completely agree with this. I feel like everyone should read 1 book a month at least. But basically, Tyrion is telling Jon that Tyrion knows what he is, and he knows what his strengths are and what his weaknesses are. And Tyrion is a man in his late 20s, early 30s. He's been around the mulberry bush a few times. But knowing your strengths and weakness is a key to survival. And this is a story that, it's a coming of the age tale to me, but it's a story about survival and how these people surviving and overcoming what they're going through changes the world and saves the world, quote unquote saves. So he's like, Robert has his warhammer, Jaime has his sword, but Tyrion has his mind. And Tyrion's character, to me, and that's why I really liked Tyrion in A Game of Thrones, is because Tyrion's character shows us that you don't have to be some tourney sword joust winning Sir Loras Tyrell to be like valuable in this story. We get it through Tyrion, and we get it through Samwell Tarly as well.
Yeah, he's completely invaluable, and like that's why this stupid ending again with freaking the Maester leaving Tyrion out of it. Like, he was Hand of the King, and was a major part in like an enemy's battle and the War of the Five Kings. So like that's nonsense. But yeah, he like proves his worth multiple times, especially in Clash of Kings. The thing about him and Jon's relationship, what you said about the story being like a coming of age story, I think makes sense. And what I noticed is that Tyrion keeps calling Jon the boy. Like, he rarely calls him Jon in his own mind. He keeps calling him like the boy.
I don't know why he does that. I don't know why he does that, but I feel like Tyrion has a soft spot for Jon because Tyrion understands what Jon is going through and what he's been through, but Tyrion understands it on a way worse level because Jon hasn't always been treated well, and neither has Tyrion. But on top of not being treated well, you could say Tyrion was treated horrible. Like, Jon was just not treated well. But Tyrion was treated horrible. On top of that, he's a dwarf. So he gets it a little bit. Like, he gets what Jon is going through. And, like, in Jon 1, Tyrion is telling him, like, bro, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. But, like, with the fire thing with Tyrion, where he's like saying, I look into the fires and I see my dad burning and my sister burning, and he basically accuses Jon of doing the same thing, and he's like, no, wait, Jon is like, I would never do that, and he's like, no, never. Well, no doubt the Starks have been terribly good to you. I'm certain Lady Stark treats you as if you were one of her own, and your brother Robb, he's always been kind, and why not? He gets Winterfell, and you get the Wall. And your father, he must have a good reason for packing you off to the Night's Watch. So Tyrion is like reminding him, like, if you did look into the fire and envision your brother burning or Lady Stark burning, there's nothing wrong with that, because look what they've done to you.
Yeah, and at the end of the chapter, the last thing Tyrion sees before going to bed is, it says, the boy stood near the fire, his face still and hard, looking deep into the flames. Like, right after he tells Tyrion that he would never do that, but Tyrion Lannister smiled sadly and went to bed. It's like very heavily implied that that's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, he's looking in that fire and he's seeing Catelyn burning in that fire. Like, I definitely think that's what's going on. But he also, like, Tyrion also keeps it 100 with Jon. Like, Jon has this image of the Night's Watch, that it's an honorable place and all the men there are like Uncle Benjen. And Tyrion is like, look around you, bro. Like, look at Yoren, look at these rapers these are your brothers. Like, this is like, you cannot believe that you're going to some grand place. Like, the Wall is an awful place, and no one should want to send their child there.
Yeah, I think, that Jon believing or wanting to believe in the honor and the respect and the duties of the Night's Watch, it shows, like, his innocence and, like, how young he really is. It kind of reminds me of Sansa, like, just dreaming about, like, this perfect, like, fairy tale life, and it's the same thing for Jon, just reversed in the kind of, like, typical, stereotypical male ideology of, like, honor and strength, whereas Sansa's is, like, dances and weddings, and but I guess you could argue that Cersei is the one who tries to tell Sansa the truth, but yeah, Tyrion's, like, the only one telling Jon, like, what he's actually gotten himself into.
Yeah. I mean, like you were saying, it is like Sansa. A lot of the Stark children, I've noticed through doing the reread, is they all have, like, these ideas of the world that are just not they're not grounded in reality. They are like fairy tales, songs, like Bran has them, Jon has them, Arya has them, all of them do. So, and it goes to show, like, these are sheltered kids, right? Like, yes, they live in a hard world, but they're sheltered kids. They've been sheltered since birth inside of a castle, getting read stories by old Nan, and they've never had to go hungry. They've never had to go cold. They've never had to worry about like where their next meal is. They've had a comfortable life. So now they're getting thrust into the real world, and what they have in their mind is like these stories and songs from old Nan, and they're like seeing it for the first time for what it is. Like the rose-colored glasses are gone, and they're actually seeing, Jon is actually saying, well, the Night's Watch isn't a noble calling. It's not. It might have been years ago, but it's not now.
It's like they're all just fresh out of high school and like, oh, college is gonna be great, and then like it's like hell. But also, to be fair, Yoren doesn't look like much, but he is a G. We learn later he's really kick-ass.
Yeah, he is. And that's funny that like Tyrion uses Yoren as like, oh, look how awful your brothers are gonna be. And Yoren, yeah, he doesn't smell good and he gets drunk or whatever, but he is honorable. Like, he is noble. He does protect the weak. Like, he takes on all of the Lannisters to try to get them back home, to try to get them to the wall and try to get Arya home. So
also protecting another Stark, like traveling with another Stark, like how he's doing right now.
Yeah. So I mean, props to Yoren. I actually really love Yoren. Shout out to Yoren, R.I.P. So another thing that is consistent throughout Tyrion's chapters, and I don't know if you picked this up, but the Direwolves don't fucking like him. This is the second time Ghost has like tried to attack him. So he attacks him here in this chapter, and then Ghost doesn't like him in Jon 1. And then later on, when Tyrion is coming back from the wall, Grey Wind and Shaggy and Summer, they don't like him when he stops at Winterfell on his way back south. And I'm wondering, like, in hindsight, does that mean that he isn't good? He isn't going to be good for the Starks?
Yeah, that's a great observation to point out, because I was just thinking that, like, the Direwolves just, like, sense what their owners are feeling. So if Jon is, like, frustrated with Tyrion for, like, I guess, for what he thinks is making fun of him, Ghost is going to attack him just, like, kind of as a joke, because he doesn't, like, really, like, hurt him like he could. But also, yeah, like you said, like, Grey Wind, like, hates, oh my gosh, Talissa? No.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Her uncle.
Yeah, and Catelyn is trying to tell him, like, listen to your wolf. So with that in mind, that makes this a little bit weirder. Because I can see Tyrion, like, his actions ultimately being bad for the Starks, but every single time he's interacted with them, he's done what he can consciously to make things better for them. So maybe his actions have unforeseen consequences right now.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, I do agree that the Direwolves do pick up the emotions of their owners. So there could be some of that as well. But I was just, like, thinking, like, in the long run, like, we know Tyrion is in Slaver's Bay right now. It's almost 100% confirmed that he will be linking up with Daenerys Targaryen. The question that I keep asking myself, so is Tyrion going to be like this person that tries to convince Daenerys Targaryen that Jon Snow is this good person that she should work with in the show, like in the books? Is he going to do like his show thing in the books? I don't know, because there's another piece on the table, which is Aegon. And Tyrion has a relationship with Aegon as well.
Yeah, but Tyrion's also, like, it seems to me like he's, like, trying to set up Aegon to fail, like,
yeah,
kind of just, like, double dog daring him to, like, go take King's Landing without Daenerys and see what happens. So I don't know how that would play into it. Because we know that he's not in a very healthy state of mind right now.
Yeah.
he's
His mind
hell-bent
state
on
is
revenge.
awful.
Yeah, he's hell-bent on revenge, and so it could go either way. He could, like, remember the connection he and Jon had, or he could be like, fuck the Starks, they were just as rude to me as everyone else, so Dracarys, Daenerys.
I mean, it's hard to tell. Like, it's hard to tell, like, what way it's going to actually go. I definitely think he will be assisting Daenerys, and I definitely think he's in this position now where he can counsel Daenerys. He's met both of the main kings, I'll say. So he's met Aegon and he's met Jon. And he knows, but he did. I won't say he. I think that Tyrion's goading Aegon into going to Westeros was more of a, like, he's not in his mind. He's not in his right mindset. Like, because I think it's awful that he did that. Like, you're gonna tell this child, this impressionable child, like, give him bad advice on purpose. And that's really not who he was in a Game of Thrones Tyrion too. In a Game of Thrones if he had met Aegon in a Game of Thrones Tyrion 2, do you think he would have given him the same advice?
Oh, absolutely not. It's completely different Tyrions.
Yeah.
This is pre Tyrion with, like, actual power and influence, and then just still getting shat on. And this is Tyrion before he finds out the whole Jaime and Tysha thing, and getting arrested for Joffrey's death, which he did not do. So they're completely different Tyrions. I think if Tyrion had met Aegon, like, how he is now, like, right now,
yeah,
there's no telling what he would have told him. I think it's funny that you said, what if he met, like, Aegon, like, right now here in Tyrion 2? And I'm like, well, we all know Jon's name isn't going to be Aegon, but, like, he's kind of talking to Aegon.
Yeah, he's something like that. That's why I'm saying, like, I feel like the unfortunate part for Aegon is that he met Tyrion after he had became, like, this dark monkey demon monster that they always thought he was anyway. So yeah, Tyrion, like, a Game of Thrones Tyrion, I really believe that George made him purposely like that, like, purposely so likable for when he falls. So you can't make I guess you could make a character, like, consistently evil, because that's what Cersei is. But Tyrion is a much more interesting villain, because he starts off as one of the, if not the most likable character and like, for me, relatable character in the story. And then he gets built up where you love him. And then it's like, bro, like, what's going on with you? And then he just, like, changes completely. And, like, that was one of my issues with the show, was, like, they made Tyrion so vanilla. Like, they made, like, this vanilla version of Tyrion. And Tyrion is like a banana split, and they just gave us vanilla ice cream. So, yeah, wasn't feeling it.
Yeah, it's like when they took out the things that make him complex and, like, a really great character, they also took out everything else that made him great, like his intelligence. Like, so now you have this stupid, like, guy who's talking to his straight up evil sister and saying, you're not a monster, when she clearly is. I think it's far more likely that now the Tyrion that we have might be closer to Daenerys in the show at the end, really.
Yeah, I think that Tyrion's ending, I don't think he's gonna die, but I think his ending is gonna be a lot different, where he's not gonna be, first of all, there's no fucking way whatsoever that Tyrion is gonna underestimate Cersei. Like, that's his whole thing. Tyrion's whole thing is to not be played by his sister. So there's no way he's going to get played by Cersei.
Yeah, there's no way he's going to see her in person or anything. He's going to stay far away from her and, like, try and play his little mind games from a different continent or something.
Right. Right. Could you imagine Book Tyrion saying, you know, okay, Cersei, I believe that you're going to stop this war while we go get this, fight this other war up here. And I believe you're going to send troops. Like, the real Tyrion is not going to believe.
Absolutely not. The real Tyrion is going to, like, I mean, if anything goes down like that at all, he's going to set up something. He's going to set up, like, a trap for Cersei. So, like, no matter what happens, he's just going to go off to the north and then, like, her castle's gonna blow up or something like that.
Yeah, it's Tyrion to me is everybody credits Tywin as like this magnificent, masterful battle planner, and I like, yeah, he is, but Tyrion is too. Like, Tyrion is that Machiavelli figure in this story, and for them to just make him be like, oh, I didn't know she was capable of that. Like, bitch, please. But yeah, I definitely can't see.
And that supports
Tyrion
your, like,
that.
Tyrion being, like, such a genius, like Tywin and war and stuff. That as much as I am Tyrion's secret target, supports your belief that he is Tywin's son, because he's just like, it's like, if he looked like Jaime, he would be the new Tywin.
Yeah, if he looked like Jaime. And Jenna Lannister tells Jaime, like, you're not Tywin's son. Tyrion is Tywin's son. Because Tyrion is just like him. He's just like him. And, I don't know, but this chapter specifically, like, it doesn't look like a lot. Like, when you first read it, like you said, it's 4 pages. But when you think of it in the grand scheme of things, when you think that Jon and Tyrion are going to eventually come back together, and the dragon lore that's being talked about in this chapter, like in a previous chapter, and like I think the 2 chapters before this one was Daenerys 2, where she gets the dragon bone bow at her wedding, and then in this chapter the dragon bone bow is described, and it's like, right, it's far, it ranges farther, like when you shoot an arrow from it, the arrows go farther, it's light. Dragon bones are black because of the iron content. Like, you get all of this stuff that, if you know George and if you read A Song of Ice and Fire, you know that these little details come back around.
Tyrion being, like, such a vengeful, like, I'm gonna embrace this monstrous imp persona that people have put upon me, that Tyrion, and then, like, resurrected Jon, it's gonna be such a different dynamic, and all the readers who, like, just really want Jon and Tyrion to reunite because of how much they get along and, like, how, like, cute of a friendship they have, it's gonna be, like, so bittersweet when they come together again, because, like, they're just not the same people. Jon is a lot smarter and Tyrion's a lot less empathetic.
Yeah, it's everybody, like, I would say that's gonna end up getting back together to fight the war against the others, in the Long Night, which we don't know how many characters where we can you know, there's plenty of theories out there of how it's gonna go down, but when they all get back together, they're all gonna be so different. Like, Arya, if she's there, faceless assassin. Jon is gonna be like this undead wolfy guy. I definitely think he's gonna be a lot different. If Jon Snow is gonna kill Daenerys, which I doubt, but if he does, it's not gonna be this Jon. It's not gonna be a Game of Thrones Jon. It's not gonna be a Dance with Dragons. It's gonna be resurrected Jon, and he's gonna be like a cross between Beric and Lady Stoneheart.
So interesting that if like you said, he's going to be a cross between Lady Stoneheart and Beric. And, like, just thinking about how Catelyn was towards Jon, like, before she was Lady Stoneheart, and then, like, now that they have this connection that they're going to be both be, like, fire whites and stuff, it's really interesting because as much as Catelyn, like, resents him, and as much as Jon, honestly, I don't think he hates her. I just think he, like, just wishes she was, like, a little nicer. They have, like, a lot in common, especially because of that.
That's true. But if Jon does hate Catelyn, he has every right to look into the fire and see her in there burning. Because that's totally what I think he's doing at the end of the chapter. But that's basically Tyrion 2 in a nutshell. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I did just want to point out, it's like a very little thing, but like at the beginning of the book, or at the chapter, he asks Ned if he can take some books from the library. And like that's all it says, but like basically all what that means is Ned was like, sure, take the books from the library. And like since Tyrion didn't say anything sassy about that interaction, and he's not like butthurt about it, that tells me that Ned was at least not disrespectful.
Yeah, he wasn't. And you know what? Speaking of Winterfell Library, like they had all the juice. They had the Valyrian scrolls, like the Engines of War from the Valyrian scrolls. They had like all of these books. And the only books that are probably left are the ones that Tyrion took with him because the library was set on fire.
Like, what is the Library of Winterfell doing with these books about dragons and these Valyrian scrolls that could be like anywhere else, like Old Town?
Yeah, we don't know if like there's copies of them in Old Town, but the one Valyrian scroll, the Engines of War Valyrian scroll that Tyrion was reading in Tyrion 1, he's like, Winterfell has the only complete copy he's ever seen. So Winterfell's library is like, they have all the juice. It's like the Citadel, the baby Citadel.
Like the Library of Alexandria. Like, I want to know what was in there before the fire.
I know. That's probably... No, I don't even want to say that because
no,
I was gonna say that's probably what's gonna happen to the Citadel, the library.
No, straight up, Euron's gonna burn the whole thing down. I'm not even questioning it. It's just gonna happen.
I tried not to speak it into existence.
It already exists.
I know.
Tyrion's just such a great character, and like it's such a short chapter, and it's amazing what George does with such few pages.
Yeah, like seriously, when I was reading it, I was like, wow, we have to talk about this, we have to talk about that, we have to talk about this. There's like so much to talk about in these little bit of pages because George does this thing where I've talked about it in a couple podcast episodes where he does exposition, where he gives us like this backstory without it feeling like a backstory. Like it doesn't feel like a big information dump. It feels like part of the story. So he's telling us, well, I'm sitting here, I'm reading this book, it's about, and then he tells us about like the Field of Fire and Aegon's like conquest and Tyrion's ancestor surviving the Field of Fire. But George does it in a way like he weaves it into the story where it's interesting and you want to know more.
Yeah, it's just so natural because like it's not an exposition dump. It's just Tyrion reading a book and thinking about it, which is such a Tyrion thing.
Very.
So yeah, that. I think that's all I had for it. Honestly, if you wanted to like dissect it more, you could, because you could just do that with any chapter. But I think that's all the big stuff.
So that is Tyrion 2. Would you like to let the people know again where they can find you?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is Alisa Patience, Alisa, and then Patience, like the virtue. I've got 2 videos about Daenerys and her parallels to Cinderella up right now. I'm working on Cersei as the Mad Queen, or not as the Mad, well, she is the Mad Queen, but as the evil queen from Snow White next. And then I'm on Twitter as Elisa Patience and on Instagram at Awaking Beauty Alley.
Awesome. So make sure you guys check her out, subscribe to her channel. I will leave the links in the description box. Thank you again for coming on and talking Tyrion 2 with me.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's honestly an honor to talk to one of my favorite YouTubers of all time.
Oh, the honor is mine. If you guys like this podcast and you're listening in podcast format, please leave a review and let me know how I'm doing. As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.